Hello folks, Jared from Southern Homesteads here. Hey, before we get started on today's video, I'm going to ask that you hit the subscribe and the like button. When we get to 1,000 subscribers, we are going to raffle off some of our Southern Homesteads authentic living gear. So hit the subscribe button, it really helps us out. So those of you that have been watching our cabin kit build know that we probably started off looking like we were going to build an ark with all of the weather that we had coming in and all the rain and the mud and the getting stuck. And then it starts to look like a cabin, and now we show up today and it looks like a spaceship. We're going to go through radiant barrier, why we use it, when we use it. Now, what we've put on the exterior here is called a radiant barrier. And let me just start by saying, you know, when new technology, new processes are brought to us, you know, in off-grid, there's a lot of theories, a lot of stuff that goes on with, hey, what's the best way to do something for the least expense, or how do we super insulate a structure, how do we do things. So when I was brought radiant barrier originally and it was suggested to us, I looked at the studies and the studies show, hey, it did amazing things, but really I've gone through a lot of different studies, and when we went and used something practically it didn't match up with the study. Yes, if we're saying that, hey, radiant barrier might be able to reduce the heat by 30% or 60%, if I'm standing inside of a structure and I'm sweating just like I was before, it didn't matter how much the study showed to me, because the effect of it wasn't seen by ourselves or our users. Now, that brings us to radiant barrier. When we used it for the first time, it was an open structure and it was the middle of summer. And the truth is, it was too hot to even work in that structure anymore. It was blistering in there, the sun beating down. It was a south-facing roof. It was a darker roof, and we were open rafter. So we went ahead and put a radiant barrier up, and I was shocked at the difference. It went from not being able to function in that space to it was ambient temperature or very close to. And so it didn't matter to me what any study showed. They all showed great things for radiant barrier, but none of that mattered. What mattered is I went from a structure that was you couldn't work in during daylight hours to it was just fine to work in during daylight hours. So that being said, this is something that we are huge believers in. We use it on all of our projects, and we actually include it in our cabin kit. So what is it? In simplest terms, it's aluminum foil. This is aluminum foil attached to a house wrap. Now, what's important about that is house wrap serves a couple of purposes on the outside of a structure. Not only does it offer some water resistance, and that's a term that I want everybody to become comfortable with, because I hear it a lot of waterproofing. From a house perspective and from a cabin perspective, when you're building something, there is no such thing as waterproof. Everything is about diverting water. If you take this structure, and I don't care what you've done with it, and submerge it in water, water's going to get in, and I don't care how much waterproofing you think you have done. Our goal is to deflect water and create a barrier for it, and that's what a house wrap does. Now, there's some problems with that can arise from house wrap or from a radiant barrier used as a house wrap. And that is, while this stops water from getting in, it has to let moisture vapor out. If it doesn't, any vapor, any water that gets trapped behind the moisture barrier, in fact, will mold and begin to mold your walls on the inside out. So when you look at the standard house wraps, so Tyvek is probably the biggest name out there, Lowe's and Home Depot, they all sell their own brands. That is a vented moisture barrier. So it will hold moisture out, but let moisture vapor escape. And that's very, very important. So the radiant barrier that we're using is a moisture barrier, but it is a vented moisture barrier. I know you can't see it on the video. The sun's facing in my face here. I can actually see the little holes in it. It has a ton of little holes in it, just like a normal moisture barrier would have, or a house wrap would have as a moisture barrier. But in addition to that, there is a foil exterior. Now, when we install this, we install it with normal cap nails. In addition to that, we go back with a foil tape and we tape our seams, doing our best to create an air dam to stop any circulation of air into the house. Couple other points to know about radiant barrier. Cost for insulation, inexpensive. In the scheme of things, if you're building radiant barrier and a radiant moisture barrier is not that much more expensive than a normal house wrap, but offers a huge, huge function. Some downsides and some things that you need to think about when you're building. A radiant barrier requires an air gap from your siding. So you can't just put, on this cabin, we get a board and batten siding finish on this. We can't just put board and batten up against this, so the radiant barrier does absolutely no good. It requires a 1-inch air gap or more. So for us, that's not a big deal. We're gonna put nailer strips on the exterior of the cabin. They all come standard in our kits. And so this radiant barrier will stop that. Now, on that note, I just want to point out something. If you're building and you're building on grid or off grid, it's something that people don't really think about is orientation of their home. A lot of times we orient based on view and based on other factors, never really taking into account what our thermal load's going to be when we're faced a certain direction. Our cabin, we faced this due south. Now, why that's important is that south-facing wall is the one that's going to get the most light. Your north-facing wall will get the least light. For us, that means because we'll have a covered porch on here, which is an open area, this wall will see very, very little direct sunlight in its life. The roof, the south-facing wall we know is going to get, or south-facing roof is going to get solar panels, which offers another barrier for heat. So just things to consider, little off topic here, but things to consider when you're putting up your house. It matters. It matters where sunlight hits. It matters what we do with that. Even as we stand here right now, it's a brisk morning out. I can tell you when I touch the radiant barrier, it's warm. When I reach inside and I touch the inside of the wall, that heat is not translating through at all. Now, a couple other notes on this. If you say, hey, you know what, then I'll just ditch insulation and I'll go with a radiant barrier. There's a couple of problems with that, especially from a code perspective. Most building departments, while they'll absolutely allow you to install a radiant barrier, matter of fact, a lot of them are suggesting it now, they're not going to let you replace normal insulation with that. All right, so normal, what we would consider normal batt insulation. So here's a bundle of it right here. This is an R30 insulation that's actually going to go in the ceiling. Now, we use this in conjunction with a radiant barrier, not a replacement of. And let's talk about why. R30, number one, let's look at the purpose of insulation. It stops the transfer of heat or slows the transfer of heat down. The R literally stands for thermal resistance. So the higher your R value is, the longer it's going to take that heat to translate from the surface all the way through. So radiant barrier stops the heat from getting in. Batt insulation stops the heat that did get in from transferring out. Now there's another side to this to consider. Radiant barrier does nothing for cold. Now, because it is an air barrier on the outside of the house, it will help with that, but it's not reflecting, it's not doing anything for cold climate. On the other hand, you have your batt insulation, which works both ways. It is the resistance for the heat coming out and the resistance for the heat coming in. And so the batt insulation will give you your insulation when you're in the winter. It'll help whatever heat came through in the summer. And so they both serve a purpose. More importantly, a building department is absolutely going to require that you use batt insulation. So don't think, batt insulation is expensive. It's not cheap. Insulating a structure is not cheap these days. And so don't think that, hey, because a radiant barrier does an amazing job in the summer, I'm in a hot climate, which we are here, and I'm just going to replace that and not put up typical insulation. Your building department is probably not going to allow it, nor would we recommend it. Now we have to address the one last issue and question we get, and it's our tinfoil hat section. Will this work as a Faraday cage? What does it do for Wi-Fi and cell phone signal? How does it affect things? Well, as far as working as a Faraday cage, you can throw your tinfoil hat away, it won't. So if that is your intention, I can save you the energy now, it won't do it. As far as affecting Wi-Fi and cell phone signal, here's what I can tell you. The studies show it does. It will affect on a small scale anything that's being transmitted in or out. So your cell phone, so Wi-Fi in a tiny home like this, it'll have absolutely in most houses, because you're spreading Wi-Fi through an interior space, won't have any effect on it. From a study perspective, it will absolutely affect those things. From a practical perspective, as this is a product that we have used and are comfortable with, I can tell you, we work in areas that have terrible cell phone coverage to start with, and I don't notice a difference in cell phone coverage when we walk into a structure with radiant barrier or a structure without radiant barrier as far as our cell phones working. So again, do the studies show? 100% studies show that this can affect your cell phone signal. What from a practical standpoint does it do? In my opinion, nothing. So just as an overview, look, if I am building a tiny house, a normal house, if I'm building a structure, I will absolutely spring for the little bit of extra money. I mean, you're talking right now, currently in 2023, that radiant barrier is running about 15 to 20% more than just your average house wrap. It's not a massive expense over normal house wrap. The benefits of it far outweigh the expense of it. If I lived in an existing house, would I come tear off my siding and put radiant barrier up? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't go through the expense of it. If I'm building, I wouldn't build without it. Good luck with your builds. Check us out, subscribe, follow us on the Kit Cabin Build.